This is my favourite era. During the early New Kingdom period, we get the re-emergence of Egypt as the most powerful empire in the Near East. Female pharaohs, a golden age in art and building works, and one of the most fascinating episodes in all of world history. A religious and political revolution that is both captivating and terrifying in equal measure. When people visit Egypt today, they go to see the pyramids and then the legacy of the New Kingdom pharaohs, the temples of Luxor and Karnak, the statues of Amenhotep III, the Valley of the Kings, and Tutankhamun's golden mask. We discuss them all in this video. Around 1630 BC, Asiatic peoples from around Palestine invaded and established the Hatshepsut dynasty in northern Egypt. Their chief strategy exploited a superiority in both horse, chariot, and political leadership. It took almost one full century for such to be rectified. Thebes became the centre of Egypt's Renaissance, producing kings, generals, and armies with the skill and willpower to reverse this Hyksos advance and re-garrison the outposts of northern Nubia. First with the 17th dynasty pharaoh Thutmose and his successor Ahmose, the first pharaoh of the New Kingdom 18th dynasty. Successive generations were able to master this new weapons technology and henceforth visit extreme violence and terror on their enemies in the best traditions of ancient Near East cultures. Men are hacked up with blades, women raped, cities and peoples burnt, survivors enslaved, gold looted, and foreign kings brought back from conquered lands, their stinking and rotting corpses displayed upside down atop victorious Egyptian ships. There is not a single Nubian left. Their bowmen have fallen amid the slaughter, and lies corpses across their native land. Their entrails drench the valleys, blood pours from their mouths. Thutmose I, nicknamed the Panther. Such is how great empires are made. Accompanying the re-emergence of Egyptian power on the world stage is both an unprecedented level of wealth flooding into the Theban economy in the form of war prizes and exploitative trade deals, and also incestuous family relations. Beginning principally with our friend Thutmose, the royal family becomes the subject of religious veneration as never before, and perhaps as a way to distinguish themselves from ordinary mortals, and better establish worship of the royal family as a unifying national cult. The pharaohs of the 18th dynasty married their sisters. An interesting and perhaps successful tactic, no doubt, but shrinking gene pools play havoc with the royal succession. Pharaohs die young in this period. Viable children are hard to come by. Tutankhamun himself likely walked with a painful club foot. The premature death of successive monarchs and the wider veneration of royal members other than the pharaoh had unexpected consequences in the early New Kingdom period for the roles of noble women. Female regents, mothers and aunts of infant kings unexpectedly and hurriedly thrust into the limelight, are relatively common in this period. One such is Hatshepsut. Appropriately, the name means foremost among noble women, and as the daughter of Thutmose I, she duly marries her half-brother Thutmose II, and after he dies just 3 years into his reign, is made regent for her stepson/nephew, Thutmose III. Hatshepsut is a fascinating character. Clearly an extremely charismatic woman, exercising power in a society dominated by men, she also manages to declare herself pharaoh while waiting for the young Thutmose to come of age. To manage the obvious tensions this no doubt created, Hatshepsut at times has herself depicted as a man, complete with false beard, and at others has female epithets applied to male rulers of the past. Her father, for example, the great warrior king Thutmose I, is depicted as a goddess. She also builds this, the mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri. It is designed as a resting place and as a place of worship for the supreme deity Amun-Ra, whom she also claimed was her own father. It's complicated. When the young Thutmose III does come of age around 1458 BC, he proves himself to be a warrior pharaoh in the best traditions of his famous forebears. In fact, such are the crushing victories he inflicts upon his opponents in Mitanni and the Kush, that he secures total Egyptian control of the Levant for the next 4 centuries. He is often regarded as one of the greatest of all Egypt's ancient pharaohs. His victories are celebrated with the killing of 120 elephants, his enemies made to crawl upon their bellies, to kiss the ground before His Majesty's might, and to beg breath for their nostrils. Egyptian power, status and wealth had reached heights not seen in 1500 years. Succeeding generations built upon these foundations by erecting massive temple complexes in and around Thebes. In this new golden age, the greatest of these was probably Amenhotep III. This is the period where gold from Nubia and tribute from the Levant is poured into the vast monuments that make up Luxor and Karnak, genuine marvels of the ancient world that still survive to this day. On the West Bank, the site of the sun's set, and hence place of the dead, we have the Valley of the Kings, innumerable tomb complexes cut into the rock and purposefully hidden from view, so as to thwart the worst excesses of those ancient Egyptian grave robbers who have plundered the tombs of the pharaohs from the time of the Great Pyramids onwards. These are the locations of those romantic tales of adventure and wonder, from the time of Napoleon's invasion of Egypt in 1798 onwards, when the modern discipline of Egyptology was born, of Howard Carter and the digs that discovered the lost tomb of Tutankhamun. From this period, we also find fascinating insights into the lives of non-royal Egyptians. From Senefer, a mayor of Thebes during the reign of Amenhotep II, who, in a surviving letter to a farmer in his employ, warns him not to let me find fault concerning your post. Now mind, you shall not slack, for I know that you are sluggish and fond of eating lying down. We also have tomb inscriptions from Akhenaten, a second bureaucrat from the reign of Amenhotep II, who seems to have been completely addicted to giving himself honorific titles, many of which he likely invented. Royal Seal Bearer, dearly beloved companion, gentleman of the bedchamber, and one who, if he gives attention to anything in the evening, it is mastered early in the morning at daybreak. But it is Akhenaten, Amenhotep III's son, who leaves us with the most intriguing legacy of all, one that had been entirely lost to posterity until relatively recently, when it was rediscovered by a series of intrepid archaeologists in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Akhenaten inherited the throne around 1353 BC. He was originally called Amenhotep IV. It is a name that means Amun is satisfied. However, during his reign, Akhenaten would attempt to destroy Amun, at a time when religion truly dominated every aspect of one's existence. he would institute a genuine revolution in Egypt's religious and political landscape. He would impose a new religion upon his people and annihilate the gods of his forebears. He has been called a revolutionary, an idealist, also a heretic, a fanatic, and possibly insane. His theology demanded worship of the Aten, which referred to the disk of the sun. The name he changed to Akhenaten, it meant something like effective for the Aten, or working for the Aten. His wife Nefertiti, her name meant the beautiful one has come. For the Nazis who held her famous bust in a museum in Berlin, this meant that she was not Egyptian at all, but some sort of proto-Aryan. Hitler was obsessed with her. Together, Nefertiti and Akhenaten built open-air temples dedicated to this new god. These were designed, of course, to enable the faithful to receive the gift of the Aten's rays of light. The sun gives life, knowledge gives creation, but it can also hurt. It can burn. And in Egypt especially, there are times when you can't escape it. Understand this, and then look upon the weird statues Akhenaten built for himself, and we can understand how unsettling and downright terrifying this new regime might be. Akhenaten was represented with a strange, elongated head and narrow, wide eyes. He had female breasts, wide hips, and narrow, spindly legs, very different from the smiling, youthful portraits of his father. Akhenaten's statues showed him as male and female, in other words, as a reflection of all life, as one, all creation. This was entirely consistent with the other great innovation of his reign, monotheism. In his great hymn to the Aten, which he probably wrote himself, and which was colloquially known as the Teaching, he named the Aten as the sole god. Apart from you, there is no other. All those temples that his predecessors had built, those temples around which ordinary Egyptians structured their lives, not only were they utterly useless, the god statues were located inside and hence hidden from the sun, but the gods they venerated didn't exist. No surprise then, that Akhenaten sent gangs of thugs across Egypt armed with hammer and chisel to desecrate any temple or statue that might refer to gods other than the Aten. There were lots of them. By intent, it was totalitarian, a revolutionary state dogma imposed upon a hapless populace by an uncompromising thought police and security apparatus. It feels chillingly modern, although how able a Bronze Age administration might be in effecting such a totalitarian ideal remains in doubt. However, like all systems of totalitarian control, there is more than a little hint of hypocrisy within Akhenaten's glorious utopia. During one of the countless ceremonies to celebrate the new sun god, we have the entire populace outside, worshipping in the baking heat, reaping the full benefit of the Aten's benevolent rays, no doubt, yet tucked away comfortably in the shade sits Akhenaten and his family. It was left to the king of Assyria to complain about this new arrangement, in particular the treatment of his ambassadors as attendees to the spectacle. Clearly an ignorant fool. When Akhenaten died in around 1336 BC, aged 36 years old, it is tempting to imagine an intense power struggle between true believers and those financially dependent on the new regime, and reactionary forces loyal to Egypt's ancient religious past. It seems Nefertiti ruled as pharaoh for a period, although the evidence is unclear. Eventually, however, a new candidate emerges, a young boy, perhaps easily moulded, ready to defend his predecessor's idealistic reforms, or perhaps break them, rebuild the temples lost to this insane heresy. His name was Tutankhaten, known to us today as Tutankhamun. His story, and the story of Egypt for the next 3 centuries, is the subject of next week's video.